All right, following on from David Attenborough, quite a hard act to follow, but hello everyone and welcome. My name is Felicity Barr. I'm a broadcast journalist and I'm delighted to be hosting this session, which is a documentary masterclass by the talented team at ITN. And with me are members of that team that are behind some of the most watched true crime documentaries of recent years. We're talking about The Investigation of Lucy Letby, which was on Netflix, The Confession, which was on Amazon, and Forensics Murder Scene, which was on Channel 5. They're going to be sharing their expertise in everything from how to secure a pitch, how to get that all-important access, how to manage your duty of care, and also the responsible use of AI in documentaries. So the team are here with me. Thank you for being with me. First of all, would you mind introducing yourselves, just to explain who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I am Caroline Short. I am Head of Global TV at ITN Productions, and I look after all of the content that we make across digital, streamers, linear channels, just about everything.
Chris.
I'm Chris Brawl. I'm the Head of International ITN, so I am responsible for pitching, developing and selling all of our content internationally, with a major focus on the US market and the streamers.
I'm Ed Bengoa. I am the Director of Post-Production at ITN, and I look after all the posts for all of the productions for ITN Productions.
All right, thank you guys. Looking forward to chatting to you in a moment. But first, let's just get a flavour of some of your recent work.
As a kid, I always thought the timeline was off.
It is a Labour landslide.
Honestly, you've got to get over Boris Johnson.
You haven't so much burnt your bridges as taken a flamethrower to them.
Well, they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile.
It's one of those conversations that starts and it just becomes quite engrossing, doesn't it?
No one's seen her since yesterday. You scream all you want. Nobody's going to hear you.
Mr. Perry fell back into addiction issues.
How'd he get it? Who was giving it to him?
This next generation's not here to compete. They're here to win. Now.
Forensic teams call the period straight after a serious crime the golden hour.
Princess Anne.
She's the best queen we've never had.
One of the defendants speaks on camera for the first time.
Round of applause, please. Some great work from ITN over recent years. Just a brief reminder, I'm sure you've all been to many sessions already today, but if you've got any questions for the panel, can you use the Slido app to submit them, and make sure you're in the Keynote Theatre room when you submit your question. I'll try to ask as many questions of the panel throughout the session as I can. All right, let's start with a pretty generalised one, but why do you think that true crime is continuing to connect so strongly with audiences? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
For me, it's because it connects with something primal within all of us, I think. I think there's the narrative of all of these true crime stories always endures because it's about the element of mystery, of an investigation, and because the stakes are always so high in what you're dealing with.
And a fascination with those who carry out crime as well. It's almost like you can't believe it, really.
Yeah, I think it's part of a human condition that you're just like, I can't imagine ever doing that. Like, really? How did they do that? What was the thing that pushed them to that point? And so I think we will always have a fascination with crime, how it's done, who's investigating, and that fight for justice. I think that it's all of those things.
So true crime remains really popular right now, but you guys all know it's quite a crowded market out there. I mean, Chris, is probably one for you. It's such a crowded market. What do you feel are the most important ingredients going into a pitch, a successful pitch that marks what you want to do as something different?
I think that the most important thing by far is the story. A lot of this stuff is cyclical, but for me, quite early on whether you can win it or not. Is the story good enough, and is it going to get people's interests at Netflix or Amazon or whoever you're pitching to? It is really, really competitive, and increasingly the stories have got to have multiple twists, to pull people through multiple parts. So I think that's really crucial, and obviously the materials. That's something that's changed a lot in recent years. The expectation now of having the access, having stuff shot before you've even pitched it. A lot of the times you're almost in pre-production before you've pitched the show.
So do you think the commissioners and the audiences are expecting much more than they used to? That's changed?
Definitely. I think there is an expectation that you, at some point, feel that you are on that journey with whatever that storyline is. So whether that is you're working alongside the police, whether that is you're working alongside contributors, family members, and that intimacy comes from material. There is no doubt about that. And I think, the streamers have changed that. They're trying to kind of move on, I suppose, those classic crime tropes, but I'm seeing increasingly that linear channels are exactly the same. There is not really a difference about what each of those places want.
I'm going to bring this up almost immediately because it's so much an important part of what you do. But how do you approach your duty of care responsibilities right from the very start of a project? Presumably that's almost number one in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the role of a welfare producer is imperative. We have it on all of our projects, it is about setting out from the outset how you're intending to approach your contributors, how you are intending to deal with difficult conversations. You are strategizing almost to make sure that the experience that those people have is a good one, because you are asking generally contributors who are family members or friends to take them back to something that's truly horrific that none of us would ever want to be part of. So, you have to take that responsibility seriously, but equally, it's equally as difficult for organisations or experts who may have really been touched by a particular case. So it's not necessarily, I think we would be silly to just think it's for people who are sort of family members. It's actually for anybody that contributes to a film, but it's also about our team and making sure that our team are fully prepared, that everybody understands how potentially they could be affected. And that's not just about our kind of processes in terms of making a film or getting people on board. It's also about Ed's job, which is about our kind of whole post-production side of things, which is why
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're brought in almost immediately, aren't you, Ed?
Yeah, and this is one of the great things about us working together from the beginning and collaborating and knowing exactly what the show is going to be and where the problems might arise, in terms of the content. I think we have a lot more graphic content these days than we ever did, and access to a lot of that kind of material archive as well. So for us, it's really important to have that duty of care with our team, set up from the beginning where people can choose to either opt out as well because they don't necessarily want to view that kind of content. What you see on telly normally has been obviously either blurred or whatever, but we see the whole thing as it is. So it's really important that we choose the right person to kind of deal with that content, and we do that with every single true crime documentary. And that whole change it comes from production to us.
We've touched on it already about how important access is to be able to make these sort of documentaries. I want to actually have a quick look at what that access actually means, and we're going to see a little clip. I think it's from Forensic's murder scene that was shown on Channel 5. Let's have a look.
Firearms officers serving West Yorkshire Police are arresting a man outside his home in Leeds. A woman has been stabbed. Forensic teams are dispatched to the scene. The stabbing is in a basement flat in Headingley. The victim has been rushed to hospital by medics to try and save her life. Forensic crime scene manager Jasmine White is briefed by the first officers to arrive on the scene.
So once we've arrived, ambulance have been called 6 and they've been doing CPR. So the female is laid essentially in the doorway at the front of the address. CPR is ongoing, extensive bleeding, which can be seen throughout the whole of the room. So whether she was found like that, whether she'd been moved in some capacity, I'm not sure.
Is it a shared flat?
Yes, it is. It's a one-bedroom flat, however, our victim has been staying in what is classified as the living room. So that's the front room as soon as you walk in, and you'll see a mattress to the left-hand side, and that's been her bedroom.
Police call the period straight after a serious crime the golden hour, the optimum time to gather forensic evidence.
All right, this is a masterclass, so let's go back to the basics. How do you go about getting that sort of access? Who wants to have a go at that?
I should probably answer this.
Go for it.
Start off with, just because that was one of my films. So with this in particular was interesting because West Yorkshire Police are notoriously sort of quite camera shy, I would say. We'd opened up an office in Leeds, and it was really important to me to make sure that we were making something that was kind of resident with the region. So we made an approach to them, and actually when people have never done something like that before, it's really scary, and you do have to essentially talk right from the outset about the worst possible scenario. And I think if you don't do that, you're setting yourself up for trouble. So whenever you do access, whether it's with an organisation, whether it's with a contributor, it's really important to have an honest, open and upfront chat. That conversation happens continuously all the way through, because actually you never want to be in a position where someone says, "We never told me that." You never want to be in a position where you've overstepped a line, or that there is a red line that's gone over. I'm always really, really clear with anybody that we deal with, that ITN, or as a production company, we have the editorial say so. So we can give people, they can watch it, we can have discussions about their contribution. But ultimately, as an organisation, we always retain editorial control. And as long as you are clear from the outset, then actually that is a conversation that you can continue to have. And no matter how difficult sometimes those conversations are, there's a clear red line. And I think on this in particular, they were extremely nervous about us filming, but actually we were so meticulous, step by step about what we were going to do, and we did a lot of outreach work within the organisation itself, because so often you can go into an organisation like the police, whatever, and the top people go yeah, and then the people that are actually doing the job are the ones that don't get a conversation. So it's really, really important, and we've always done this at ITN, to make sure that actually we do all of that groundwork first, because if you don't do that, then it becomes an issue later on down the line. What would you say?
How do you actually establish those red lines? People will say, well, what is a red line when you're, for example, dealing with the police? What is it that they might not want you to show that you want to show, or vice versa?
The thing is, they're not going to want to show bad practice, and also we don't want to show that if it's accidental. Yeah. And there's a different conversation to have, isn't there?
Yes, it is.
If actually it's something else, and that leads a story in a different direction.
Yes.
But actually, if you're working alongside a police force to make a documentary, I think you just have to be very, very clear about your guidelines. Sometimes that's about giving reassurance. That's about saying you can have a viewing of this documentary. But that doesn't mean to say that because you don't like something, we're just going to change it. That's not what that's about. Editorial control is about us saying, we will listen, we will take on board what you're saying, but ultimately we will decide. And that is about that kind of navigation, about how you tell a story, and that you're not taking a side, that you keep a kind of a neutral line.
And do you think it's got easier because we now know that authorities, organisations, look at your face, hear me out. If you went back 25, 30 years, getting access to the police would have been incredibly, it was really quite rare. But obviously the momentum builds when one force sees that actually they've told the story of what it's like to be in the police force. They've told the story, really well from a victim's perspective. Have you found that momentum means that actually more organisations like the police, doesn't have to be police, can be emergency services, pathology, forensic crime, whatever, are they now more open, do you think?
I mean, In terms of development, I think they're definitely open to being approached, but I think it's a double-edged sword because they're also more cautious about when things don't go as smoothly. So I think for any access, whether it's family, organisation, the police, whoever it may be, for me, having a clear vision of what the project is from the get-go and being really transparent and thorough and upfront with them is really, really important. It's how you get the relationship off to the best start. They may want some input into it, and I think showing that there's some flexibility and that it's a genuine partnership is really important.
And Ed, we've kind of touched on it already, but what changes in your post workflows when some security and confidentiality become critical to a particular part of that story? How does that work for you?
Well, it's huge, and we have to set that up at the very beginning of any show that requires this kind of like security. So we will set out how we're going to deliver the rushes, how the rushes are going to be delivered to us, the security around that, the drives have to be encrypted, how the drives are going to be transported from the shoot to us, or if they're delivering rushes to us by another method, what are the security protocols within that kind of platform, and so we have to be really super thorough of that, especially as well with contributors as well, because that's really sensitive. Police, really sensitive, so those conversations happen at the very beginning, and it's super strict for us to manage that content, not only in transport to us, as well as obviously once it gets to us, how what we were saying earlier about the duty of care and who handles it, how it's handled. The security actually is also physical. We have to also have sometimes down to kind of closing an edit suite with a key, so it's kind of who has that access is really important, so that we can reassure the police or whomever we're working with that no one is going to have access to that content or leaked or anything like that.
I think it's about you just can't take anything to chance. The thing is, it's a privilege to be invited to record something in this way. And so you can't take that for granted in any way, shape or form. It is our duty as well to protect everybody and every organisation and every individual to make sure that we deliver what we say we're going to deliver. So, it's imperative that we get those systems correct, I think.
Yeah, that reassurance, isn't it? Because otherwise, is that trust in us for the next job as well. It's important that we do that really thoroughly.
And when it comes to contributors, particularly those who might be family of victims, friends, do they ask to see the final cut before it goes out? Obviously, you have editorial control, but do you allow them to see that so that because it's quite something to give out your personal thoughts at what could be one of the worst times, remembering one of the worst times of your life, and then just to see it suddenly on the screen?
There's no way that we would ever, that we would ever do that. Certainly, on all of our documentaries, Lucy Letby is a prime example. We, it was, we had some really brave contributors on that film who had never spoken but were in absolute fear. And for them, there is no way in the world that I would ever have wanted any of those people to see anything go on screen, particularly on a global stage like Netflix, without having an understanding about what that was going to be like. And it isn't just about kind of what they see, it's then about the impact of that. So that's where the duty of care comes back in, because, if we're doing our job properly, they should be properly prepped. They should understand what it's going to be like, how it's going to be, what they need to do. And then once it's gone out, there's a life after that too. And so it is about, it's just about making sure that everybody is okay. And I really wouldn't want anybody that we work with, that where we make a film and they're involved, to not have been party to it before it goes out.
You mentioned Lucy Letby. One of the interesting things about the documentary was the fact that you did anonymise a couple of your contributors, and actually the way you did it was using AI. If you haven't seen the documentary, let's just show you a clip to explain what we're saying, basically.
I remember the first day of lectures. I'd walked into this massive lecture room. I didn't know anyone. So I went off and sat on my own. But then another girl came over to me. She sat down and said, "It's really nice to meet you. My name's Lucy." There was something about her smile that put me at ease straight away. And after 4 days at university, we were basically inseparable. We were in lectures together. I'd go over to hers for dinner, she'd come over to mine for dinner. And we went clubbing, we would go together. If we'd been out for the night, I'd stay at hers or she would stay at mine. We'd go to the cinema. Basically everything that we did together. She had a very quirky sense of humour. It was just always fun. Lucy was an only child, so her parents basically doted on her. They were so proud of the fact that she had gone to university and she was going to become a nurse. She wanted to learn, she wanted to know everything, to make sure that she knew what she was doing. And Lucy and I had our first placement together at the Countess of Chester Hospital. We were both really quite excited about it. But straight away, the nurses in Chester were quite cliquey. I remember we went to the staff room to have lunch, and the nurses who were there were all sat chatting. I remember Lucy trying to join in with the conversation, and they just ignored her. There was this kind of feeling that the nurses didn't want us there, the medical team didn't want you there. I started to think that some people were actively going out of their way to make things hard for Lucy.
Okay, so who wants to talk me through why you decided to digitally anonymise in that way your contributor? Explain the background. I feel it's going to be Caroline again.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It is. Okay, so with both the contributors, we were talking to them for probably 2 years. And what became really apparent, obviously, it's a noisy space. There's a lot of people with lots of opinions about, what they think about the case and what they think about Lucy. And actually, it was Lucy's friend that brought it up really early on, that if anybody was going to engage in a story and engage in what she had to say, she really didn't want to be a shadow, and she didn't want to be, I don't know, just hands and faces all over the shoulder and lots of those traditional crime tropes that we use. And so it was a conversation of, well, what could we do? What are the options? And how brave do you want to be? She was involved from the outset. When the mum also came on board, we discussed what we had been discussing with another contributor, and she was absolutely like, I want someone to engage with this, and I want them to see into the eyes, and I want them to be able to sit there and go, okay, this is their story, and I don't want a barrier, but I cannot show my face. So it felt like the AI was probably the only option, and we really explored what that could be. There's obviously lots of discussions about whether that was right or wrong to do that. But actually, when a contributor comes to you and wants a new option, it's our job to say, well, we're going to try. And I know that it felt new, and people were opinionated about it, but they loved it. They got to choose what they looked like. They got to choose what their voice was, their hair colour, the size of their body.
So it gave them some control, actually.
I actually really feel like it did. Yeah. And I think, we can sit here and say technically whether we should do something or not do something. We can have an opinion about AI or not. But actually, these people had really, really significant stories to tell. And they wanted to tell it in their way. And that's why we chose to do it.
And the reality, for all of you will know this, is that when we first started doing things like pixelation or making people sound like Daleks, at that time, people said, no, you can't, this is not real. It's, so it's almost like we're moving on a stage from then.
And editorially, obviously, it doesn't change their stories. It just makes them more comfortable to tell them, and it humanises what they're saying, like you say, rather than a shadow. And why should they be in a shadow? And I think creatively, it is a real challenge, and I think it's something that we've all got a duty to try and push that onwards. Yeah. The technology is here, whether we like it or we don't like it, and creatively, we've all got that duty to make these films as impactful as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, Ed, you're going to be seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a first, wasn't it? So, and it was really interesting. I think with any production, you involved with the VFX company from the very beginning as well about how they're going to do things, the schedule, how they're going to deliver the files. But in this case, it was even more so because it hadn't been done, and it was, we needed to kind of make sure that the creative intent was there, for the creators to decide whether it was good or not. But from our point of view, it was like, are you delivering the right file? Is that what's the software spitting out correct? And it took a while to get to a point where we were happy with it, and it was HDR as well. So it was kind of lots of different things that needed to be to spec, and that collaboration with the VFX house was really important to us, and it was from beginning to end until literally look.
I'm going to stick with Ed for this one because I think it's one for you, really. What do you think distinguishes a good factual finish from, a premium one that really one that stands out from your perspective? What is it that it looks like?
Well, I think a premium one has more of everything, isn't it? So there's more budget to get that. So what you acquire capture time is better. You have better cameras, you have more time, and then when it comes to us as well, we have longer schedules to do grades, to do fancy stuff. So I think that's what it is. Often with other kind of more everyday stuff, you don't have that in the schedule, and you have to kind of like spit things out much quicker. With premium, you have the ability to spend that time crafting and giving everyone every sort of stage of it, not just picture but also audio as well. You have time to kind of craft the edit, craft the sound mix, and make it shine. In that point of view, we don't have that luxury in everything that we make.
Yeah, so I've got plenty more questions from my side, but actually I can see there's loads of questions coming in from the audience, so I'm going to go straight to the audience now. Chris mentioned pre-pitch content. What content would you make to take in to the pitch? How do you actually, the actual content that you go to a commission and say, look, this is what we want to do? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the story, but traditionally I think that would be shooting interviews with contributors. And that does a few different things. It shows that you've got the access. So when you're sat in their offices, you go, well, that we've got the access to the families or to the victims because they've sat down and given us an interview. It gives you a way of showing stylistically what that interview might look like, what approach you're going to take. So yeah, I think shooting interviews, and also just, I know we all talk about tapes and sizzles and stuff, but I think showing that you're willing to go out there and meet people, fly to wherever, to fly to locations, it shows a real willing, and it shows that you're really serious about the project. So I think they're the main things.
Yeah, but also you don't always have to spend loads of money either.
No.
So, and I think increasingly when you're working with linear channels, they also want to see people on tape. Well, and phones are bloody brilliant now. So, and they're a lifesaver if we want to do something quickly. So it all depends. It's project based, I would say, as to what you contribute, what you do.
That's actually really refreshing to hear.
And some of it could even be a phone call, like a recorded phone call is good enough. It's just something to show that you've done the homework, that you're quite far down the road, and given it is so competitive, it shows that you're ahead of other people, effectively, as well.
This is a good one. To what extent do you feel the pressure of adapting to ever shorter attention spans, and any advice on dealing with this? Because you're doing long form, but the world is looking at stuff in short form, which is,
Oh, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we think that actually when you're making a long form doc, people won't have the attention. But if the story's good enough, you're going to watch.
Grabs you.
I always think. I remember I used to work on the One Show years ago, and we were making short form films, and the mantra then was first 30 seconds. Grab those first 30 seconds. If you grab them then you've got them, and it'll be great. And it was so true. And I've always thought to myself, whatever happens, make sure that the very first bit is engaging, so that you then know that you've got them, and then you can kind of tailor what that is. I think with materials and kind of personal materials and stuff, that's also incredibly affecting, isn't it? So if you've got something that is, I don't know, personal video, or it might be a crime scene or whatever, the job is done for you too. So I think it depends on what you've got available, but also how you use that. And at the moment, anyway, you might find me here next year going, well, let's change every 1 minute.
Yeah.
But I think at the moment, I think we adapt to that.
But it was interesting with the Lucy Letby doc, the access that you had to her police interviews was what grabbed me right from the beginning, which is why you did it that way. I mean, when you've got content like that, you know, people are going to binge that, aren't they, I think?
They are. And actually, you know, we had a lot of conversations about how to start our film. And I think in that instance, you know, somebody is arrested and their family are really upset. And actually, they were supportive of her from the outset and maintain that. And I think it was really important to show from the outset that her family were on her side, and that is the reason why we went with it in the end. So, but it was affecting, and it did the job. It got people to watch. So I understand.
But from the other side, as you say, it may be something that people hadn't actually thought about from her family's perspective. About where that left them and how they would be feeling at that time.
Yeah, awful.
So it actually makes it more balanced.
Yes.
That's my view.
I would like to think it was a very balanced film.
It was a very balanced film. Yeah.
On the short form point though as well, I think whether you're doing a 3-part series for a streamer or a 90-minute film for the BBC or Channel 4, I think it's the same rule, which is you are fighting to keep people interested, you know, so, you know, whether it's how you get a viewer from episode 1 to make sure they're tuning in for episode 2, or whether you're just keeping them between act 1 and 2 in that 90-minute feature. That's where the stories are really important. They've got to have the twists. They've got to have the OMG moments that you go, I can't believe, I've got to find out what they say in the interview. Or, you know, I think it's really crucial that the stories sustain and that people come back to them.
Yeah, that's.
It was interesting. So sorry. Go.
No, I was just going to say it's true actually, and actually it's probably even more true for linear channels. You know, Channel 5, Channel 4. We work with them a lot, and actually the kind of end parts and the beginning of parts crucial.
I mean, Chris, this is probably one for you with your international hat on. Letby obviously went on Netflix globally. What sort of stories do resonate globally? What are the ones that you can actually sell to a global market, do you think? Does it have to be something that has hit the international headlines, or can it be more of a local story?
No, I think it can be a local story, and I think there's no hard or fast rule for that. I think it really is, and this isn't a cop-out answer, it is really story dependent, and I think it has to have that thing that you go, oh my God, I've got to tell my friends about that. I can't wait to tell my partner about that story. You know, the thing about the cult and the blah, blah, blah. It's just got to have that shareability factor. And I think, you know, there was, particularly in the States, there was a big thing a few years ago where everything had to be very big IP and well-known names, you know, stories that everyone and names that everyone has heard of. Whereas I think now, internationally, I think everyone's moved away from that, and it really is about the quirkier, more unexpected stories. They're the ones that are cutting through, and they're the ones that we find are getting traction, the stories that are slightly more unusual.
But also that's good, isn't it? Because that makes you more creative. That's making you really have to think about that story and how you're going to sell that to the audience who are watching. And, you know, there are certain crime docs that will always get watched. There's certain subject matters and certain awful crimes that people will always sit and watch. But actually, I think you'll find, like you say, actually some of those kind of what feel like they're small stories, actually they're hidden gems.
Yeah.
I'm still traditionally going through regional newspapers and going, oh my God, look at that. Because actually they are the ones that all of a sudden, you know, that could then feel like you or me. That could happen to you or me.
It's closer to home.
It's closer to home. And they're the things that resonate with you, I think.
This follows on quite well, actually. What are the main pitfalls to avoid making a dull documentary? Which is, I think that's a great question, whoever asked that. Anybody want to try and...
I don't know. What's a dull documentary?
What's a dull documentary, they asked.
Never made one.
What? Yeah, I mean... What is too formulaic, I suppose, is possibly, I would phrase it.
I think it's trying to second guess what a buyer wants, going, oh, Netflix will definitely want this because they've done that. And I think it's really important, like we were saying with the AI earlier, it's really important, especially with true crime. There's so many sort of tropes now that we all associate with the genre, it's really easy to sort of fall back into them. And I think creatively the challenge we all have is, what does a true crime documentary look like that doesn't start with a water tower and a drone shot? You know, what is the creative challenge around that? And I think it's letting the story dictate that, and the approach you take is quite important.
It's also about characters though, isn't it? And I think, you know, something that might make a good news item doesn't necessarily mean that is then going to be able to make a 90-minute feature or a 3-part series. It's totally different. Those people that tell that story have like such an enormous responsibility, really, because they've got to be engaging. They've got to have something to say. So probably a kind of something to watch out for is to make sure that, you know, those characters are good.
Yeah. You need them.
It rests on them.
Yeah, it rests on them. It rests on the story and on the characters.
Yeah.
I mean, Ed, from sorry, made you sit up there. From a creative perspective.
Just enjoying the
Yes, I know, you're listening. It's like, take notes. From a creative perspective, I guess you've seen how documentaries have changed over the years, and they have become more polished, and they have become things that we want to binge. What makes you sit up and watch something? You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I'm just interested from your creative brain, the way things have changed, the way documentaries are put together.
Well, I think it's about the structure of the story, like you were saying. I think if you have the story, then everything sort of follows. And if you have access to lots of really juicy archive, that's another thing that is really important for a documentary, you know, that affects us, you know, how do we get that archive? And in terms of the access as well, how do we get the content from police, for example, you know, because there's a lot of legacy kind of codecs. So if you can get that access to that as early as possible, then you can treat it and make it look better. So we have the tools nowadays, some of them AI tools that, you know, help clean up a lot of things that are really old content that would have looked crap ages ago, but now we can kind of make it look better. So I think that, you know, the standards are much higher, and I think that's why, you know, they look a lot better, you know, and they can carry the story. But I think it's always about the story rather than what we do. And obviously, if you shot something really well and you have amazing kind of rushes, then you can make them look better if you have the time. But I think, you know, there's no that from a post point of view or what it looks. I think is about the story, really.
And audiences are quite discerning these days, aren't they? I mean, they know their minds. A lot of them will know what is a good piece of TV, I think, because they watch so much content.
Yeah, they don't hold back, do they? You know straight away what people think. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that keeps you on your toes. I think it makes you better at what you do. I think you're honing your art all the time, and if you take that for granted, then, you know, that's
all for you.
Yeah. Totally.
Here's another one.
Feedback.
I'm so sorry.
Instant feedback, you know, which is good, you know, so we can then. You know.
Yeah.
It's not always good.
But do you listen to it?
Always.
How do you approach making a documentary on a subject you are unfamiliar with? Research, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, we as a team will decide if it's a subject that we want to tackle and that we believe we can tackle in the proper way, and then if we do decide to do that, it's just immerse yourself in it completely and totally. I think it comes back to whether it's partnership or access or about the pitch. You've got to walk into that room, any of those rooms, knowing that you know everything about the story. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere.
Because they always ask the thing that you think, oh no, I don't know the answer to that. And there's nothing worse. So actually, you do have to really do your homework, I think. Yeah.
You need to know your stuff. To Chris's point, are we moving away from copy-pasting a winning doc format, as we saw extensively in sport following the success of Drive to Survive?
I think so. And I think networks and broadcasters are sort of expecting that as well. Like, to your point, I think viewers get bored quite quickly, you know, whether it's the story that you're tackling or the style in which it's being done. Viewers get, they're very savvy and they get bored. So if something looks very similar to 2 or 3 other docs that have been on already, then they will turn off quite quickly, I think. So I think we are.
Okay, this... catching you off guard a little bit. What's the best documentary you've seen, and why was it so good? I don't think you're allowed to pick one that you've made.
This might be predictable, but I absolutely loved My Perfect Neighbour.
Right.
And if you've seen that, the rawness of that material, the way in which that story is told, it's captivating. It is so sad. There are points where you are shouting at the telly. There is a moment that will never ever leave me, which was when, if you've not seen it, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. But when Dad has to tell his children that their mum has been shot and that she's died, and I've never seen anything quite like it. And you could have a debate about whether that's right or wrong, that moment. But I really thought that was an amazing piece of work,
And it moved you, which is what.
Oh my God!
Which is what content and television.
That's what it should do. It should make you sit and think. It should make you angry. It should make you cry. You should have a response. And if it doesn't, then maybe that is the dull telly that.
There you are. That's the dull documentary. If it doesn't make you feel something inside.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to pick their favourite doco?
I was just panicking there at what.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's a very good question.
It's a good question.
I think mine is probably The Jinx, the HBO series about Robert Durst. Not just because of the ending, which was remarkable, which I won't spoil if anyone hasn't seen it, but I think the way it moved that genre on a lot. I think they sort of did Recon in a completely different way, which everyone then tried to copy. The story's phenomenal, and like I say, that ending had just left you sucker punched at the end. So I still think about that series.
Ed, do you have any? You don't have to have
I don't.
That's fine.
You should have just said, one of
Lucy
ours.
What are the 3 main ingredients of a good documentary?
Story, character,
archive.
Perfect. That's a great answer. One from me. Looking to the future, I mean, things are moving all the time, but what do you think the audience and your commissioners are now looking for in documentaries going forward? And is it something? Are you able to come up with those ideas that they want, or are you able to adapt to what they want? Do you sort of mean what comes first, chicken or the egg?
I mean, for me, and I'm only speaking for me, I feel like that's sort of our job as a team. I don't think. I think if you wait to be told what they want, what networks or streamers want, then I think it's going to be quite tough out there. I think it's our job, particularly in true crime, which is hyper competitive, to tell them what the next iteration is. You know, it's to find the next story or the next iteration of a cult story or whatever it is. I think it's up to us to dig out that thing that they don't know they want yet, and then we package it and they go, got to have that, never seen that before. You know, that's what our job is, and it's getting harder and harder. I think the onus really is on us to discover that.
It's also, though, isn't it? It's also about your relationships with those commissioners as well, because you'll get to a point, I think, when you're working with individual commissioners where they enjoy working with you, you enjoy working with them, you get to know them, you get to understand the things that will make them tick. So there's clues there about what you think is going to work and what isn't. So I think it's a bit of a combination of really, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are a lot of young creatives who come to MPTS, and I guess we could almost end with you giving some advice on people who want to get into documentaries. I mean, these days, of course, you can experiment yourself, can't you? You literally can pick up your phone or a small camera and go out there. What would you say?
I'd set up my own YouTube channel and start publishing. Like, you don't need to wait. You don't need to wait for people like us. You just need to go and tell those stories. And because actually people like us are looking at people like you on YouTube going, that's an amazing story, maybe we should work with them. I would 100% say there is nothing stopping you making a doc and publishing it and owning that. There just isn't.
That was something we could only dream about, wasn't it? It just didn't exist.
God, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a brilliant opportunity. It's a great place for us to be at the moment, I think.
Chris?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just fine. If there's a story that you believe in and you're passionate about it, then just make something of it, because and stick to your guns, because a big part, I think, of what we do now is really backing your ideas and standing by them. And I think if you're passionate about a story, then just make something about it.
And I guess from your perspective, it's the same, isn't it?
Exactly.
You can edit, you can do your
everything is possible now. You can shoot everything on an iPhone, like we know. You know, it looks amazing. You can edit it on free software. You can, you know, make it look good, and you can do sound, and you can dub it into however many languages. You can do all of that and then publish it and have people have access all over the world. So I think there's nothing stopping you if you have that idea, and then everyone's doing it, obviously, and it's how you do it, you know. But the tools are all there, available to everyone. So.
All right, we are out of time. I think that's a good way to end, looking to the future, and hopefully the future of documentaries is looking really good. Please thank the panel for their time.